here's what I want you to discuss around your tables if you can. When you think of confrontation, what comes to mind? Do you associate negative or positive emotion with confrontation? And somebody confronted me last week after this and said, you don't give us enough time to talk. So I'm going to give you more than I did last week. About 10 seconds more. You ready? Let's start that, and then we'll pray in just a minute, and we'll jump into Daniel. Answer those around your table. All right, have y'all talked that one out? We're good? Is that enough time? I'm looking at the person that confronted me to make sure that I gave you enough time. Nope. Oh, that's a rookie mistake right there. Let's show the next slide, Terry, the next one for discussion. What makes a confrontation difficult? And go. All right, I'm going to pray for us, and we're going to jump into the book of Daniel, chapter 4. You ready? Let's pray. Thank you, God, for this night, for the jobs and the homes and the families and the things you've given us. Thank you for these moments when we can just kind of take a break, when we can refocus, when we can look at your word and learn. I pray, God, that you would help us specifically in this area as we follow you. Help us to follow you in the way you would confront people in the wrong and people that we need to help get right. Give us wisdom and open our eyes to your truth tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I want to hear what you thought, negative, positive, what makes it so difficult, and I want to start with this table right here. What did y'all say to those three questions? What'd you come up with? Say that again. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Anything else you want to add? No? How about you guys over here? Super interested in what comes out of that table.
We had plenty of time to think about it.
Matt was saying when you can leave somebody with their dignity, it helps so much. But confrontation is hard, but he sees it as problem solving.
So, Zach, you kind of saw it as a negative. You said negative. You're seeing it as a positive thing because you can solve a problem. Interesting. And leave them with their dignity. Interesting. How about y'all in the back?
We said what makes, were you just answering the first question or all three?
All three.
We said what makes confrontation difficult is the other person.
That is such a good answer. That is such a Chris answer. 100%. Would anybody else at your table like to speak?
I think like the different personalities.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. We both want to be understood, right? Or everybody in the argument wants to be understood. Sometimes personalities just clash, or we make sense to ourselves, but we don't. The other person might not understand our point, or vice versa.
So understanding perspective.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. That's good. How about y'all's table? Yeah?
I see it can be positive.
You find confrontation, the intent to be positive. Why?
I think if you go into a confrontation with good intentions and that you're trying to have a positive outcome, it doesn't have to be negative. Not all confrontation has to be this big blow up. You can disagree with somebody but still have.
Did you guys all hear that? Really good. Anybody else at your table? Do you agree, BC? Better say yes.
No, I
No?
do not agree.
No? You don't agree?
I do not. I thought every confrontation, just like he said, is negative.
Interesting. Right? How about in the back? What'd y'all discuss? All of it? Yep. Yep.
Oh, I kind of think too it's a positive in a way because kind of lay it all out there when you're confronting somebody. You're not like beating around the bush or tiptoeing through it like you can say with the discussion. You're really saying what someone may not want to hear or don't think they should want to hear, but sometimes the best thing for them to hear.
What they need to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Jason,
Yes, ma'am.
it takes to have to get to that point. You know, to have that negative, that positive, the outcome. How do you get to that?
That's why we're here tonight. We are going to get there.
That was our like summary was that the outcome can be positive, but confrontation itself is usually difficult with, and as soon as you say that word, it just automatically, there's
Yep.
so many negative connotations.
But the outcome can also be negative, right? It can be both. It can go either way, and we're going to talk about that.
Lack of confrontation can cause problems too.
If you don't confront when you need to, that can cause more problem. How about y'all's table? What y'all? Yes? Mm-hmm.
I agree. That's good thinking.
That's it? Just, uh-huh.
I guess we bounced it both ways, but confrontation is, in my opinion, is something that you're gonna have to deal with. It's just a part of life. All it is two opposing opinions, and it depends on how you handle it. The outcome may be that when we leave, that we're just going to disagree, but we're going to work through that situation, even though we don't agree. Doesn't mean that we're gonna, sneak up on somebody after the meeting, and do them dirty or something. We're just going to have to understand that, his opinion's different than mine, than hers or hers. But we've got to find that common ground and work towards
That's good.
that goal.
So I'm sensing that we kind of I need to back up before we jump into this, and let's draw a distinction between confrontation and argument, because they are not the same thing. So maybe we should discuss that at our tables. I don't have a slide for that, but let's talk about what's the difference between confronting somebody and arguing with somebody. Can you talk about that? Confronting, arguing, what's the difference? I'll give you till I get a nod, and then we'll. Somebody just chime in. What's the difference at your table? What'd you come up with? Difference between confronting somebody and arguing with somebody, or is there? Somebody jump in.
Confronting, you're trying to accomplish a goal. Arguing, you're usually going in circles.
Okay.
Both people feel like they're right.
Confrontation comes with a goal. Okay. Did I interrupt somebody here? Somebody. That's where you were.
Yeah, usually like arguments are kind of more heat of the moment. We're confronting something that's built up that you put some thought into.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go confront him on this issue.
Okay. I heard a different perspective over here.
Confrontation kind of implies that there's a wrongdoing or a lack of effort that needs to get fixed.
Making amends.
Yes. Whereas an argument implies like a common disagreement where you're not really aiming at fixing a behavior.
Perfect. So I just want to summarize that because that's where we need to go. So an argument is one person thinks one way, another person thinks another way. Neither one is willing to change the way they think, but we are willing to talk about it or yell about it sometimes, right? That's an argument. That's totally legit. A confrontation is a wrong has been done. Not an opinion. It's not a thought, but a wrong has been done, and that wrong needs to be confronted, needs to be addressed. So we're going to look at that tonight. If you follow Jesus, there will be a time when he will lead you or prompt you. Oh, you're awesome. He will lead you to stand up for what is right. There's going to happen. If you follow Jesus, you're going to notice a time when God is saying, you need to say something to him. You need to say something to her. He's going to lead you to stand up for what is right. Now, let me give you a little bit of review. I think I got out of order, not you, Terry, not you, Mike. It was me. We are talking about Daniel, who in 586 BC, as a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid, saw the destruction of his city. The Babylonian Empire marched down to Jerusalem, totally destroyed Jerusalem, and took him, his 3 buddies, and a couple thousand of the up-and-coming young people in Israel, and kidnapped them and marched them 900 miles north to Babylon and walked them right through that gate, the Ishtar gate, paraded them right down that street. Those are the cobblestones from 586 BC. He walked down that street, paraded in front of all the Babylonians, cheering, yay, look what we've done. We've captured all these people. And then he and his buddies were taken to that place, the palace, to be taught how to be good Babylonians and to be taught how to serve. So his whole life was uprooted. Can you imagine being a teenager and being taken from your family, moved 900 miles away to a different place, different culture, different language, different gods, different everything? How would your faith survive? Daniel's thrived. And we talked about this last week, he pre-decided before he walked through that blue gate, he had pre-decided, when I'm tempted with what I'm about to be tempted with in this city, I know how I'm going to choose. He didn't wait till he was tempted to make a decision. He went in knowing, I'm not going to do anything that disrespects God. He didn't wait till he was in the heat of the temptation to decide. So it's one of the big takeaways we have to take from Daniel is he was a pre-decider. And I know that's not a word, but we can do whatever we want. It's 2023. He pre-decided how he would face temptation. Okay? And when he did that, God blessed him. God honored him. God gave him favor. And he was promoted to a big position in Nebuchadnezzar's government. In fact, we're going to find out in just a minute that he was elevated as a teenager to one of the top spots. He became an advisor to the king. He was in the king's inner circle. So he went from kidnapped, changed his name to Belteshazzar. His whole world is different, but he honored God. He pre-decided to always honor God, and God favored him, blessed him, honored him, and elevated him to a position where now he was on a daily visiting with the king, which is an amazing thing. And so what we're going to see today is how he handled confrontation. So let me just do a survey. Right there, perfect, Terry. How many of you, I think I could just tell by the way we were talking at the tables, how many of you, when it comes to confrontation, you would rather eat a bowl of glass than confront somebody? But how many of you are like, bring some on, I'll take it right now? Yeah? Isn't that crazy how we're wired so differently? We need both of you, by the way.
Will you redo that again?
No, I won't. What, you want to see it again? I like confrontation. Raise your hand. I like it. I'm into it. I'm happy to do it. It's not a hobby, but when it needs to be done, I'm happy to do it. Raise your hand. I really, really don't like it, even when I need to do it. About half and half. Interesting. Well, there's 2 extremes. I'm not saying those are the extremes. Here's the extremes. The 2 extremes are, when it comes to confrontation, unwilling and unloving. And if you follow Jesus, you can't be either one of those because he wasn't. Unwilling basically says, what you're doing is none of my business. Who am I to judge? I'm no better than you. Just going to keep my eyes on my stuff and not worry about you. It's your business, not mine. I'm not willing to confront. The other one is unloving, and I call these drive-by confronters. These are people who, they don't have to know the context, they don't have to know you, they don't have to know your story, but they're willing to blap, 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 drive by and shoot you with, you're wrong. And let me tell you all the reasons you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong, here's why. If you have social media, you know that's like the preferred platform for the drive-by confronter, right? No context, no story, no relationship, no nothing. But here I am, and I got it right, and you are wrong, and you need to know why. You experience this? You understand? There's an unloving component there. And Jesus was neither unloving nor unwilling. So as Jesus followers, we have to figure out, how do we confront in the right way, at the right time, for the right reasons? Because if you're going to follow Jesus, you're going to have to confront some things, some people. And so you, as a Jesus follower, have to figure out what's the right way, what's the right time, and what's the right reasons. Many of you use the word motivation or intent. What's the right intent or motivation? So how do we do that? What if you have a child or an adult child who's making bad choices? How do you confront that in the right way, see the right reason at the right time? If you have a family member who's just making foolish financial decisions, how do you, as a Jesus follower, speak into that the right way, the right time, for the right reasons? If you have a friend or somebody in your circle or in your church that you're close with that's making terrible sexual decisions, how do you confront that in the right way, the right time, for the right reasons? We have to figure that out, because if you're going to interact with a community of faith, if you're going to have people in your family that you love, you're going to have to figure out how to confront correctly. So in the life of Daniel, we're going to see it. So we're fast forwarding. We were in Daniel chapter 3 last week. We're fast forwarding to Daniel chapter 4, but there's a gap of about 30 years between 3 and 4. So Daniel has been favored and elevated to this position. He's now 45, maybe 55 years old when this story that we're about to read takes place. He's been honored by God, elevated to this advisory position. He's number 2 in the nation. There's the king, and there's Belteshazzar, Daniel. Here's what Daniel chapter 4 says, and it starts not with Daniel talking, but with the king, Nebuchadnezzar, talking. He says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living in my palace in comfort and prosperity. Sounds like a king. But one night I had a dream that frightened me. I saw visions that terrified me as I lay in my bed. So I issued an order calling in all the wise men of Babylon so they could tell me what my dream meant. When all the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and fortune tellers came in, I told them the dream, but they could not tell me what it meant. I'm going to say they would not tell him what it meant, because in just a minute, when he tells us his dream, you're not any of those things, magician, enchanter, astrologer, or fortune teller, but when you hear his dream, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's easy to interpret. Like anybody with a brain knows what's going on here. It's not that they could not. I think they would not, because they were scared to death to tell the king the truth. At last, Daniel came in before me, and I told him the dream. He was named Belteshazzar after my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is in him. I said to Belteshazzar, Daniel, chief of the magicians, don't think David Copperfield or Chris Angel magicians. That's not at all what this was. You might know this word better by the New Testament reference to this word, and that is the Magi. These were wise men. These were studied men. These were men that tracked the movements of the stars and the sun and the moon. These were religious scholars. These were just brilliant people. He was the chief of them. He was the number one guy. I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too great for you to solve. Now, tell me what my dream means. And then he shares the dream. Here's what he says. While I was lying in my bed, this is what I dreamed. I saw a large tree in the middle of the earth. The tree grew very tall and strong, reaching high into the heavens for all the world to see. It had fresh green leaves, and it was loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade, and birds nested in its branches. All the world was fed from this tree. Then, as I lie there dreaming, I saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven. The messenger shouted, "Cut down the tree and lop off its branches. Shake off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Chase the wild animals from its shade and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump. Leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze and surrounded by tender grass." Now, let him be drenched with the dew of heaven and let him live with the wild animals. It's shifted from the tree to him. You with me? Let him live with the wild animals among the plants of the field for 7 periods of time. Let him have the mind of a wild animal instead of the mind of a human. For this has been decreed by the messengers. It is commanded by the holy ones, so that everyone may know that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world. He gives them to anyone he chooses, even to the lowliest of people. I memorized that verse specifically for election season. The Most High God rules over the kingdoms of the world, and he still does, right? Do you believe that? And he gives authority over them to anyone he chooses. And sometimes it's the lowest of people that he chooses. Interesting. So you're not a magician. Don't go forward, Terry. You're not a magician, but you can kind of see what this dream is about, can you not? If you were standing there and you had heard the dream, you'd be like, oh crap. I don't want him to know what this dream means. I think he knows what this dream means, but I'm not going to be the one to tell him because he's the king. Belteshazzar, that was the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, tell me what it means, for none of the wise men of my kingdom can do so. They're not willing to tell me. But you can tell me, because the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Upon hearing this, Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, was overcome for a time, frightened by the meaning of the dream and what it would mean to tell the king. Then the king said to him, Belteshazzar, don't be alarmed by the dream and what it means. So Daniel replied, I wish that the events foreshadowed in this dream would happen to your enemies, my lord, and not to you, for I care for you. This is a critical component when we see what happens next. Daniel loved this man. He had been serving this man for at least 30 years, maybe 40 years. He had grown to respect and love him. He just says, I care for you. I care about you, and I want what's best for you. I wish what you dreamed wasn't for you. I wish it was for someone else. Daniel tells him the bad news. The tree you saw was growing very tall and strong, reaching high into the heavens for all the world to see. It had fresh green leaves. It was loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade. The birds nested in its branches. That tree, your majesty, is you. For you have grown strong and reaches up to the heaven, and you rule to the ends of the earth. Then you saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven, saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze and surrounded by tender grass. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let him live with wild animals in the field for 7 periods of time. This is what the dream means, your majesty, and what the Most High has declared will happen to my Lord the King. You will be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals. You will eat grass like a cow, and you will be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way. 7 years. 7 years will pass while you live like this. Until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. But the stump and the roots of the tree were left in the ground. This means that you will receive your kingdom back again when you have learned that heaven rules. Now, that's a tough thing to deliver that news, but that wasn't the hard part. That was not confronting. Daniel did not confront the king right here. He was just interpreting the dream for him. He was just doing what nobody else was willing to do. Here's what the dream means. I'm sorry, it's a bummer, but it's you. And he could have stopped there. Okay, he could have stopped right there, end of discussion, but he doesn't. What Daniel does next is confront the king. He cares for this man, he respects this man, he wants the best for this man, and he can see that the king's actions will lead to this terrible prophecy. You're going to live like a cow for 7 years and eat grass for 7 years. I don't want that for you, so I need to confront you. King Nebuchadnezzar, please accept my advice. Stop sinning and do what's right. That's Jesus following confrontation at its simplest. Stop sinning and do what's right. Break from your wicked past and be merciful to the poor. Perhaps then you will continue to prosper. Daniel did not have to say any of that. He risked his reputation, he risked his friendship, he genuinely risked his life by saying those words. By saying to the king, you are sinning, stop. Stop sinning and start living right. Otherwise, here's where it leads. That's confrontation, isn't it? I mean, that's like the most in-your-face confrontation I can imagine, standing before a king who on a whim can slit your throat. But he's willing to say to this man, because I love you and I want the best for you and I want you to connect with God, you have to stop sinning and start doing what's right. That for me is what it looks like and what it sounds like to confront someone you love. Stop sinning and do what's right. Now let's fast forward to the New Testament when Paul is writing to a bunch of people in a church in a little town called Galatia, and they're struggling with each other. And at the end of the book, he says, dear brothers and sisters, and this is just for Jesus followers, dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path. And be careful. Be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself. So here's the question. How do we confront the right way, the right time, the right reasons? Gently, humbly, carefully. Gently, humbly, carefully. That's how we need to learn to confront as Jesus followers. Gently, humbly, and very carefully. I'm going to give you 2 prayers to pray. If you feel the need, the prompting, the leading from Jesus to confront somebody. The first prayer is, God, help me to confront with the goal, many of you said this, with the goal of restoration. If you're going to confront somebody you love, the goal has to be restoration. You are off the path. There it is. I'm going to help you get back on track. That's the goal of confrontation. That's the motive. I see you off track. I see you walking a bad path. I want to help you get back on the right path. We do not confront because we're right and they're wrong. And it's our job to correct them. That is a wrong motivation to confront. I'm right, you're wrong, I'm going to correct you. That's not our role. It's God's role to correct people. It's our job to say, you're on a wrong path. I can help you get back on the path. We confront to help them be right with God. This is why you confront someone you love, to help them be right with God, to help them see if they will stop sinning and do what's right, they get back on track, back on the right path. I got confronted 5 or 6 years ago by one of the sweetest old ladies. Maybe she wasn't sweet. She was sweet to me. I don't think many people thought she was sweet. She's in heaven now, so I can talk about her. Some of you know Jane Howard, knew Jane Howard. Remember Jane Howard, anybody? Jane Howard. For a couple weeks in a row, I don't even know what I was teaching on, but on Sunday morning, I would say something snarky like, you didn't see that on the flannel graph when you were growing up. And I was making fun of You know, you only put positive, nice things on the flannel graph. And it was, thank you. What's a flannel graph? Back in the day, instead of TVs, you would have, if you're teaching kids, you would have a flannel graph, and it was like a big piece of poster board, but it was covered in flannel, like a green sheet of flannel. And then you would have little cutouts of, here's Moses, and here's the Red Sea, and you would just kind of stick them up there. It was a visual. It was a really old way to do things. And I was making fun of it. And so I got a call from Jane, and she said, can I have 15 minutes of your time? I need to come talk to you. Absolutely. She sat in my office, and she said, you are hurting me, and you are hurting there was one other lady, Doris Ivy. You're hurting us, and I need to tell you why. Oh, okay. Tell me how I'm hurting you. When you make fun of flannel graphs, you are making fun of years of work that we did teaching children. We didn't have TVs. We didn't have screens. We didn't have anything. We were using what we had, doing the best we could with what we had to teach the kids that God gave us, and you're belittling it. I felt about that big, and I said, Jane, you are exactly right. And I apologize, and I have never told a flannel graph joke again. I haven't. I refuse to. I was so grateful for that confrontation. It hurt. I didn't like it at the time, but she took the time to say, could I have some of your time? Because I see you doing a thing that's hurting people and ultimately hurting you, and I can help you. She wasn't mad. She didn't yell. She wasn't angry. She just wanted to point out, you're on a bad path, and I would like to help you get on a good one. That was gold. That was gold. She was very gently helping me to stop sinning and do what was right. She wanted to restore my relationship with her and Doris Ivy because I had hurt them. That's confrontation. Confrontation as a Jesus follower always needs context. Context. Drive-by confrontations, the angry people on social media, it's not effective. It means nothing because there's no context. For the Jesus follower, the context is always relationship. If Jane and I did not have a relationship, that confrontation would have meant nothing to me. If Jane had posted on Facebook, my pastor's making fun of people who use flannel graph, that would have meant nothing to me. But because I had known her for 15 years and watched her serve and help and do anything that we asked her to do, and I knew she loved me, I could take that. The context of that confrontation was, I love you, Jason. I want to help you. You're screwed up. I want to help you. So as Jesus followers, our context is always relationship. It does us no good to confront someone we don't know. They're not going to take it. They don't care. You don't. You don't take confrontation from somebody who doesn't know you, know your story, know your context, know what you're going through. You don't take that. When we give it to people without context, it just creates more problems. So the context is always relationship because the goal is always restoration. You with me? All right. Second prayer is this. God, help me to confront with caution or carefully. Help me to confront carefully with caution. Paul said, be careful that you don't fall into the same temptation. In other words, if you're going to go talk to that person about the sin you see in their life, you better be careful that you don't start doing the same sin. Be careful that you're not tempted. Now, when we confront, we are tempted to think, I'm smart, they're dumb. I've got it together, they're screwed up. I'm innocent, they've sinned. I'm good, they're bad. These are not the thoughts of a Jesus-following confrontation. You have to understand that as a Jesus follower, when you confront, you are vulnerable to pride. Just have to be aware of that. That it's tempting to think, I am above this person because of my behavior. They are below me because of theirs. When the truth is, God is above us all. And we all stand on level ground. It's not our job to put people down. It is our job to put them back on the path. Okay? Be careful confronting and understand this. If you are concerned about a specific issue that you feel like you have to confront somebody with, it could be that God has given you that prompting because they need to hear it, or it could be that that issue is a reflection of a weakness in your own heart. And so you have to be careful. That's why Paul said, be careful. When you confront somebody about an issue, make sure that that issue is shored up in your own heart. Otherwise, you're going to fall into the same trap. Does that make sense? Okay. Pro tip. This is my favorite one. This is my favorite and least favorite thing about being a pastor. You are not responsible for their response. You are responsible, if God leads you, to confront this person. You are responsible to say, stop sinning and do what's right. You're responsible to do that humbly and gently and carefully, and that's all. And what they do with it is not up to you. You don't have to check in on them next week. Hey, are you doing what I said? You don't have to monitor their behavior because it's not up to you now. You've given them what they need. You're off the track. There it is. Here's how you get back on it. Now, the response is not up to you. It's up to them. This is what Daniel did, but Daniel was not responsible for the king's response, and the king did not do what Daniel said. Daniel said, stop sinning and do what's right, and this won't happen. But all these things did happen to King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, he was taking a walk on the flat roof of the royal palace in Babylon. As he looked out across the city, he said, look at this great city of Babylon. By my own mighty power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor. While these words were still in his mouth, a voice called down from heaven, oh, King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom. You'll be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals. You will eat grass like a cow. 7 years, 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men, kingdoms of the world, and gives them to anyone he chooses. That same hour, the judgment was fulfilled, and Nebuchadnezzar was driven from human society. He ate grass like a cow. He was drenched with the dew of heaven. He lived this way until his hair was as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird's claws. 7 years later, King Nebuchadnezzar starts talking again. After this period of time had passed, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven. My sanity returned, and I praised and worshiped the Most High. He had, up until this point, been referring to 3 things: the spirits of the gods and himself. And now he says, I worshiped the Most High God and honored the one who lives forever. His rule is everlasting, and his kingdom is eternal. All the people of the earth are nothing compared to him. He does as he pleases among the angels of heaven and among the people of earth. No one can stop him or say to him, what do you mean by doing these things? When my sanity returned to me, so did my honor and glory and kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored as head of the kingdom with even greater honor than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and glorify and honor the King of heaven. All his acts are true, and he is able to humble the proud. Did he learn his lesson? Learned the hard way, didn't he? Daniel got to watch it. Daniel was probably in charge of Babylon for those 7 years while King Nebuchadnezzar ate grass and crawled on the ground and lost his sanity. Daniel, risked it all to tell that guy the truth, and the guy didn't want to hear it. But in the end, it worked out pretty good. Worked out pretty good for everybody. You might have to take a risk to confront the person you love. You might have to risk your relationship. You might have to risk time. You might have to risk them being mad at you. But it's worth it if you do it the right way, the right time, for the right reasons, and just let God have the results. Let God have the results. And what's crazy is, not long after that, not long after Nebuchadnezzar was put back in charge, another king named Darius came in and totally wiped him off the face of the planet. He got to rule for about another year while Daniel was watching, and then a whole new kingdom comes in and takes over. And we're going to look at that next week as we talk about how to stand strong when everything around you is changing. That's next week. Any questions? Comments?
Makes me curious how he was driven out into the wilderness. Like, how did God do that? Like, did people do it, or it doesn't go into any detail, huh?
No. He himself said, I lost my sanity, and we've all seen crazy people.
So maybe he just went crazy, and so
I
they
think he
drove him out
just
because
went
of that.
crazy. Yeah. Other questions? Anybody? All right. Matthew, you want to pray for us? Thank you.